Hello everyone, Dennis here with Refined Memories, and today I decided we're gonna attempt to. Well, it's something it's kind of new to me. It might not be really new in the world of photo editing, but kind of new to me. It's something I just stumbled upon. It's called frequency separation, and it's a technique used to clear up rough skin. I have pretty bad skin. I've got patches here that are dark. I think this is residue scarring from when I used to be a welder. My skin's real blotchy from it, and other people have these issues too. And some people don't want photo retouching done. They want the images to be pretty much as they are, and that's understandable. But some people do. They want scars removed, or they want moles taken out, or they want their skin just to be nice and smooth, and that's understandable as well. So this technique is a way to get that done. It's a way to take your skin, smooth it out, kind of keep it as beautiful as possible while retaining some of the texture. Like you see some filters that people use and it just blurs their face and all you see is like their eyes with this big blur. And that's just the wrong way to go about it. This way retains the texture of your actual skin. Like any wrinkles you may have, which they can also be processed out, but any the actual texture and the how your finger has a fingerprint. Well, your skin has a print too, and that texture can kind of still be retained. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through. I'm going to open up Photoshop and open up one of the images that I took of myself, a self-portrait, if you will. And we're going to go through that, and we're going to go through the process of how to do this frequency separation. And the reason it's called frequency separation is because you have basically two frequencies. You have your color and you have your texture. So those are the two separations. We're going to separate the colors in your skin from the texture of your skin, and we're going to work on smoothing out the colors and leaving the texture, or improving the texture if necessary. So let's get right into it. We'll start by opening up a file here. We're going to start with this one right here because it's the lighting is on the entire face. This is kind of like some butterfly lighting I was working on for myself. Hadn't quite mastered it yet, but I was working on it. These others, like, you have so much face shadow on the face that I don't think they'll be great. This one maybe, but I think this is the best option right here. This one's got the full face in light, so I think it'll be a good example of how we can do this. And I've already done edits on this, so we're gonna actually default. This is back to right out of the camera. You can see there's some discoloration in the skin, and we're going to take care of that. And even some of these imperfections where the textures are not, the most pleasing, like maybe around the eyes, and there's these little dry skin on my nose, and there's also this flake of something. I don't know what that is, but we're going to take care of that with this technique. Before I go in there, let's just apply, let's do an auto edit, see how that looks. All right, that's good. Let's reduce my exposure a little bit and maybe turn up some highlights just a tad. Bring up the shadows just a bit, and let's throw some contrast in there. And of course, we'll go in here and we'll bring down some of this texture naturally, just a little bit. And clarity, we'll do that a little bit. And dehaze, I think we're actually going to raise that just a tad. And then I'll go into. This is Camera Raw right now. Like anytime you open a raw image up in Photoshop, it opens Camera Raw, and that's where you usually do your primary edits. But we're not focused too much on the editing here. In fact, I could just come over here and put one of these presets on. These are actually a little underexposed, but we can fix that real quick just by raising the exposure over here. And that's pretty nice. Let me make sure there's no masking going on. If there's masking, I want to take that out because I don't know. There's no masking going on because I don't want to interfere with I don't want to adjust the texture too much in Camera Raw. We're going to come in here, we're going to fix up all this splotchiness and the discoloration and try and clean that up a little bit. Alright, so let's open the object in Photoshop. The last time I did this, I was joking about how depressing knowing how to do this is because it really shows your age. Like when you look at the before and after, before is natural, but I mean, this is the before right here, but when you see what I'm about to do, it takes 20 years off my looks, and it's scary. But, all right, the first thing we do, we've got I'm going to go ahead and just flatten this just to have a base starting point. And the first thing you want to do is I'll hit Control J, and what that does is it creates a copy. I'm going to hit it one more time because we need two copies. And I'm going to name this one here blur, and I'm going to name this one here texture. These are going to be our two different frequencies. And for the blur, it's pretty simple. You go up to image, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And from here, what we really want to do is just, we want to give it enough blur to where it doesn't take away a lot of the detail. Like you just want the colors to smoothen out a little bit. Like we'll look at it right in here. And when those colors start to smooth out, that's when we've got enough blur. So right in, I've got to let go of the pointer. So let's say, that might be too much. That might be okay. Actually, let's go just a tad further. We're going to call it right. Actually, that's too much. Let's go right in there. Let's call it about 20.8. And that's where it just starts to smoothen out the colors. And it's not so hard. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit further. Let's go with that. And hit OK. Once you have your blur completed on the colors, you want to go to your texture layer, click on that, and then go over to Image, Apply Image. You want to select the layer here to be blur because that's what you're trying to subtract here. You're trying to subtract the blur from your texture. And you want to put this on subtract, and you want to make sure that these settings are 2 and 128, 100% opacity. Everything else should look just like this, and then just hit OK. And then you want to come over here to your blending, and you want to put this on linear light. What we're going to do is I'm going to actually put these in a group. So I'm going to select both of these and hit Control G. And as you can see, if I turn this off, there's not much difference in the two. It's pretty much identical. There's a slight little variation, but that's just because it took an average and it did all of the hard work, and it basically created something we can work with. So the idea here is that we can go into this blur layer, and you can use different tools. One tool that I prefer to use, it's faster and easier, is I'll come over and I'll use the lasso tool. One thing you want to make sure is that you have a feather on your lasso tool. You want to make sure it's feathered. I find between 35 and 45, 55, somewhere around there is a good selection. You'll notice it once we start applying the blur, if the feather is good enough or not. But 35 is a pretty good selection for most images. So then you want to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, my favorite blur. And you want to look at, let's zoom out of here a little bit. And you just want to, we're going to start bring it down here. That's the original. And as you start raising that up a little by little, you'll start to see those colors smooth out a little bit. Right now we're at 40 pixels, and you can already see it's starting to do some difference. And here's the preview before and after. And you can already see it's cleaning up that skin right there. And honestly, I think we can go a little bit further. Like about, maybe not there. Let's bring it back some. Maybe 75. And you can see the before and after. And it's cleaned up that rough area. And you hit OK. You just basically go around your whole face working on this and adjusting the blur as necessary. You don't want to, some places will require less than others, so you don't want to use the same amount. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And see, I like to bring it back down to 0 and just start over, because you don't want to overdo it too much. It'll start looking really fake, and you might as well use one of those ugly blur filters. But I'd say right in there is probably pretty good for that. And hit OK. But as you can see, when we do this, we're not losing any of that texture that's there. That texture is still there. This is before and after. This is after, this is before. That texture is all still there, but we've smoothed out the skin. And let's go in here and get some of the nose parts here. Let's blur that out a little bit. And this is pretty quick. It doesn't take long. That's probably too much for the nose. Let's back it up and just wait for that subtle change in gradation from, there we go. It's starting to get there, right in there. Let's go a little bit more, about 44. Let's hit OK on that. And I see this is a little splotchiness right here. I'm just going to hit that one more time individually. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I know we already hit this area, but we're going to tap it again a little bit just to smooth that out. Some of that's texture, so let's go right in there. And we just go around the face until we're happy with what we got. We're going to hit a big old spot right here. We're going to grab all of this. And we're going to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I mean, you can see immediately what it does, but that's probably a little bit too much. Let's try about right, and we're getting somewhere. A little bit more, a little bit more. All right, maybe a little bit more still. All right, maybe we were pretty close before. Okay, well that's fine. Hit OK. We'll come down here and we'll grab some of this right in here. I like to do pretty much the whole skin because my skin is so bad. But if the skin's not that horrible, you don't have to do this. My skin is just really splotchy or blotchy. My skin is just really blotchy, so I pretty much do the whole face. Blur, Gaussian blur, and we'll bring that down a little bit, down a little bit. I'd say up a little bit right in there. And then once I get most of the face done, I'll go back through it and I'll look at it and I'll see if there's little areas like right in here that need more smoothing. And I'll do a little extra. Right in there. And you'll see these dark areas. That's a lot of that. Some of that is texture, and I won't get that with the color, the blur coloring. I'll have to come back with texture and clean that up. This is primarily for blotchiness. Like, there's also a little bit right here on my nose. Let's see if we can clean up some of this right in here. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And you can see immediately that goes away. Right in there. And I'm going to get, I don't know if I think I did, but I'm going to make sure I clean up this a little bit better on the point of my nose. I'm sorry you have to sit here and stare at my nose like this. It's not the prettiest nose in the world, but hey, we're not all perfect. That's what Photoshop's for. Alright, filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And yeah, right in there is beautiful. Alright. Okay. And let me deselect this. Alright, I see a little bit right in here that I might be able to do something with. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Some of that's obviously texture because it's actually getting darker. So we'll just go with that and leave it alone. And let's look at a before and after of what we got so far. We haven't even touched the texture. But what we have done is cleaned up the blotchiness in the skin. So this is after, and this is before. And this is what I'm talking about, how depressing it is. Like, this is what I actually look like. This is me 20 years ago. Now, granted, the texture of my skin needs to be cleaned up a little bit, and we're going to do that now. And you do that by not selecting the blur, but selecting the actual texture. And there's several ways you can use to clean this up. You can use the magic little healing brush here and just click on little areas like that or that and clean up this little freckle. There's this little blotchiness right here. Let's just make my brush a tad bigger to handle that. And you can go and clean that up, which that didn't do anything. Another thing I like to do though is use the clone. The clone is one of my favorite tools, the clone stamp. Basically, you hold Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, and you click on some smooth skin, like say right in here. And you use your brush, and you can come by and clean up little areas of harsh skin. Like some of this is kind of rough. You can clean that up a little bit. And like in places like this where my skin looks like it's kind of dry and scaly, you can come by and use some of this. You want some natural texture to it, but we can start with this and we can just kind of paint that away. And you still get this natural skin look, but At least the texture wise, it's natural. And I'm continuing to hit Alt. Like as I paint a little bit, I'll hit Alt one more time right behind it. Yeah, and you can clean some of that up. And we'll do the same thing over here on this area right here of my skin. We'll just clean some of that texture up. Even if you've got like some hair on your nose and you don't like that, you can come by here and just boop, 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 and take care of all that. Yeah, just using this and going through meticulously. This can take as long as you want it to, depending on how much you want done, how much you want to correct. We've got this dark patch of my skin. That was all part of the texture here. I'm going to grab this area right here, and I'm just going to go right up in here, just like that. Reselect my area, and just like that, that dark patch is gone. We're going to do the same thing to this section right here, because we've got kind of the same thing going on. I'll select right here. Actually, let's select right here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Do that. Oh, I just cloned something I don't want to clone. Hold on here. And I've got such splotchy skin, I'm cloning splotches. Or blotches. I don't know. Is it splotchiness or blotchiness? It's discoloration. But you just want to play around with this until you get it, until you're happy with it. Ideally, you want to use some clean skin and clone it over the... See, you'll grab hair too if you're not careful. And clone it over the bad skin. Okay, and you can see that that dark area is gone. There's a little weird spots on my lips over here, or my lower lip. We can clean that up. I don't know what's going on with my lip there. It's old age, I tell you, but we can clean that up. I don't like this little dry skin on my nose here, so we can clean that up. Just like so. There's the scarring. Actually, that's probably where I already cloned it a little bit, and I just cloned a defect in my skin. But there, we can clean that up. You can go through and we can clean up the texture individually as well. Like, if you don't like how harsh it is, you could always do very similar to what you did before. Like, certain areas, like on my forehead, the texture is really strong. I can go in here and pick little parts of it, and we'll do blur. We just don't want to, we don't want to blur it like that. We don't want to blur it that much. You want to do really, really subtle blurs, like just until you can barely see a difference. Oh, I forgot, if I don't let go, it doesn't show it. So that's too much. That's still too much, I think. That's getting better, but let's go with 3.5 and hit OK. So that we've still got the texture there, but we've smoothed it out a little bit. We've blurred some of it out, and this is good for areas, for people with me that have really bad skin, but have, you know, areas of lots of texture, and the texture is aged texture. It's not like natural texture, and you want to clean that up. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. There's other ways you can clean this up too. See, that's too much. We want to go maybe right there, because you don't want to get rid of the texture. You just want to smooth it out a little bit, make it softer. And we'll do this again right in here. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. A little bit more than that. All right in there. Control D. Okay. And you can just go along and play around with it, and before you know it, you'll have a great image without all the blotchy skin, with cleaner. You know, this is before and this is after. It's a huge, huge change. Very depressing. This is me naturally. This is me 10 years ago. I mean, it's unreal how amazing this technique works. And you can make it as natural as you want. I didn't even have it on full strength there. But you can make it as natural as you want. You can bring back some of those imperfections, because they do make you who you are. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's also really cool that you can take it to this level. And I'm on 71% of opacity here, so it's not full strength, but it's still a huge, huge improvement. But basically the idea is to separate your texture from your blur, and how you treat those two different layers or frequencies is up to you. There's different ways you can, like I could literally take this clone stamp tool, and instead of blurring out my texture ever so softly, because the more you blur it out, the less real it's going to look, and the more you're going to lose that texture. Instead of doing that, you can just use the clone tool, find a nice smooth place of your skin, like it's really hard to do on my face. Like say this part of my skin right over here. It's a little blotchy, but let's make the brush a little bigger. And instead of getting rid of all that, you can just use this skin as a base, and you can go through, and instead of, you know, doing what I did up here, I can just use the skin from my face down here, bring it up here, and just paint all that away. But there, I mean, that's basically what you can do. You can do the same thing over here. You can just paint that away. And you're still putting that, you're basically copying the texture over here and putting it over here. So it's still very natural. But anyway, I mean, this is basically the gist of it. This is basically and I'm at 71%. If I went 100%, you know. But I like to bring this down to about at least between 60 and 70%, somewhere in there, to give it some natural look to it. Even 50% is not bad. That's 50% of the changes before and after. Like 50% is not bad either. I do like to go a little bit higher than that though. Like maybe right in about, I like about 75%. Somewhere between 60 and 80 is my preferred spot for that. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. This is called frequency separation. This is a technique used to smooth skin. It's something that's not really new, but it's new to me. I recently came about it, and I thought it was pretty cool, and I wanted to share that with you. But that's it. That's how I would go about. There's several different ways you can go about smoothing out skin. This is the way I've recently found, and I really like it, and it seems to work the best. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I appreciate you watching. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all of those things. And I will catch you in the next video. Have a great day.